welcome back to the BTR Boxing Podcast Network. I'm your host, Sean, and this is the preview for the heavyweight showdown between Joseph Parker and Fabio Wardley this coming weekend. Big heavyweight showdown. I'm really looking forward to this one, ladies and gentlemen, and happy to be talking about it. Before I get into this episode and the rest of the coverage for the episode, I just want to take a moment to say thank you as always for supporting the show. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Career Profiles, the fourth part of Mike Tyson's career profile. And again, thank you for those that have been continuing to support via Patreon. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that. Well, without further ado, let's get into it then. This is the week's preview, a big heavyweight showdown. Joseph Parker taking on Fabio Wardley. A fight which Joseph Parker didn't necessarily need to take. Joseph Parker's put himself in prime position to be the next candidate to fight Alexander Usyk. However, Fabio Wardley has been slowly rising up the heavyweight ranks with really good victories in its midst. And Joseph Parker clearly wants to be active, clearly wants to stay active. Takes a big test here by going in against somebody who we know what he's got, but I'd still like to think he's a bit of an unknown quantity in Fabio Wardley because we don't know what his ceiling is, so to speak, in terms of his ability. I'll go through each of their recent fights and their careers, of course, and talk a little bit about that and give my thoughts and feelings on this particular fight. Going in with Fabio first, I think, would be a good start because Fabio 100% is the underdog in this fight. Joseph Parker's recent victories and recent resurgence of his career has certainly led people to believe that, you know, he's the rightful challenger next to Alexander Usyk. But Fabio in the background has been taking on all types of different challenges. For those who don't know, Fabio actually came from the unlicensed boxing circuit. And many years ago, this would have been like a pipe dream for someone like Fabio. And now it's a reality. He's put himself into that reality. I think a lot of people will expect this fight to go one way with Joseph Parker being the victor. And obviously I'll give my own prediction on this. But I think what Fabio Wardley is bringing to the table here is the ability to knock out Joseph Parker at any point during the fight, as he has done with previous opponents. You could write this guy off and say his boxing ability is limited, his experience can be limited. He's been learning each fight after fight after fight, where seemingly there's been fights where he's been behind in and then he's came back and he's been able to get that victory. I think the last fight against Justice Honey was a good example of how he was behind, how Justice Honey was dominating the fight. But then all it took was that one straight shot down the middle and it was over. And it was over. People felt like Justice Honey should have been given an opportunity because he was dominating the fight. It should have been a rematch, but it hasn't happened, has it? It hasn't happened. So Fabio Wardley's been given an opportunity against a big name in Joseph Parker and could really change the landscape of heavyweight boxing once again if he beat him. His fights with Frazer Clarke were great learning fights for him. He had the split decision draw against Frazer Clarke in the first fight. He had a horrific cut, Fabio Wardley, and then in the second fight, he blew him out of the water in the first round. It's like crazy, weren't it, to see like how he just took him out. He scrambled the senses of Frazer Clarke and ended the fight early. But he's done this against the likes of David Adelaide as well, and Nathan Gorman, former British heavyweight champion previously as well. So, you know, he's beaten some good names on the domestic scene. He's beaten an over-the-hill Eric Molina. He's beaten Nick Webb, a good domestic heavyweight fighter previously. Beaten a former Daniel Dubois opponent and Richard Lartey. So he has had some decent opponents as he's gone through his boxing career. So he's now 19-0 with 18 KOs and the one draw on his resume. Going into this fight, he's going to be the underdog because he's fighting a very experienced former world champion in Joseph Parker. So naturally, the odds are going to go in the favour of Joseph Parker. We can't count Fabio Wardley out. Anybody that is counting him out is being a bit naive here because all it takes is for him to land the right shots on Joseph Parker, which I think he can in the fight, and it could change the way this fight goes. But I'm going to go into Joseph Parker's recent career a little bit before I start talking about the fight, the technicalities of the fight, how the fight could go down, and predictions. So for Joseph Parker, as I said earlier, resurgence is the word I love to use when a fighter seemingly repairs the career from what looked like a couple of years ago was on its backside. Since his return, since his loss to Joe Joyce in 2022, 3 years ago, he's come back and he's had wins against Jack Massey, Fega Opolu, Simon Keane. Then the last 3 victories in particular are the ones that have put him right in contention to fight Alexander Usyk. Those were the victories over Deontay Wilder, Zhilei Zhang, and in his last fight, Martin Bakole. You could argue that Martin Bakole was a very last-minute replacement, of course, because he was supposed to be fighting Daniel Dubois for the IBF heavyweight crown. Didn't happen. But he still went and beat a fighter who had beat Jared Anderson, a prospect in American boxing and heavyweight boxing. So Bakole came over there with a last-minute chance, took an opportunity, and got put down and got put out. Simple as that. He wasn't ready for that fight. He took it on the last minute to save the show, or save part of the show, took a good payday for it, and Joseph Parker took advantage of that, and as a result, got another fantastic name on his resume to say, do you know what, I've beaten this guy, and this guy. Why am I not being given the opportunity to fight Alexander Usyk? Well, he's certainly right up there, which is why I don't think he needed this fight. I don't think he didn't need to take it, ultimately. But at 33 in the heavyweight division, he wants to remain active. And obviously with Alexander Usyk having a back injury, people make what you will of that, technically having a rest. There's no fight going on now. There's no purse bids being done for a fight with Alexander Usyk. So rather than sit around, I've got to applaud Joseph Parker for taking this fight against a dangerous fighter who could basically ruin the progress that he's made over the last 3 years in one fight. Joseph Parker's very experienced, very good fighter. We've seen him in some great fights over the years. Dillian White, we've seen him in Anthony Joshua, we've seen him in there against Derek Chisora. So we know he's got the ability to come in there and make this an easy night's work for himself. The way he beat Deontay Wilder and Zhang was something to behold. I mean, in the Zhang fight particularly, he was down in rounds 3 and 8, but yet he still got the majority decision because he'd outboxed Zhilei Zhang for large parts of the fight. The same with Deontay Wilder. He just absolutely made Wilder look very amateurish in doing so. And he's just looked great. I can't sort of stress enough how great he's looked recently. The move to go with Andy Lee has definitely made a big impact on his career. And I think Andy Lee's got the experience being around the Tyson Fury camp and being part of that corner to know the sort of things he needs his fighter to do to go and beat Fabio Wardley. And I suppose it really bleeds nicely into that conversation now, doesn't it? Like, how is this fight going to go? What are the technicalities? How is this fight going to be won and lost? For Fabio Wardley, with his lack of experience, which is what I think most people will be looking at here in this fight, he gets hit a little bit too much. He can be there to be hit a little bit too much. A fighter as calculated as Joseph Parker isn't going to waste those opportunities. So you'd like to think initially this could be a one-sided affair. But I don't think it is. I think Fabio Wardley has actually improved over the last couple of years. Okay, he's not got the same level of experience as Joseph Parker, but what he does have is the equalisers in both hands. The ability to change the course of a fight. Very much like Deontay Wilder used to be able to do. He could get outboxed for 9-10 rounds and all of a sudden it takes one right hand from him and he was taking people out. I think Fabio is a better boxer than Deontay Wilder. I think his experience has really come on leaps and bounds, and although Deontay Wilder was a bronze medalist in 2008, I still think Fabio's better than him. I think the fundamentals he's learned over the years have become better. But I do think he's there to be hit. And if they don't have a calculated game plan going into this fight against Joseph Parker, this could be, up to 6 rounds max? It could be, but it might not be. If Fabio Wardley comes in there with a calculated plan of frustrating Joseph Parker, not allowing Joseph Parker to work, smothering Joseph Parker, maybe he'll be able to do some damage on the inside. Maybe he'll be able to do some damage at range. They're relatively sort of similar in stature, these two guys. So I don't think there's any real physical advantages for either one of these individuals. You've got Parker at 6'4" and Wardley at 6'5". Yeah, there might be a difference in reach. I don't know exactly what that is, but for me, physically, they're a similar size in this division. So I think it's going to be a case of whose strength matters the most in dictating the course of the fight. If Joseph Parker tries to outmuscle Fabio Wardley and is successful in doing so, and he can hurt Fabio Wardley both on the outside and the inside, then it's going to be a relatively foregone conclusion. But I think Fabio's got the ability here to cause some problems for Joseph Parker on the way in, and I think if he can do that, then I think it's going to make it a very interesting fight. If he's able to get them shots off as Joseph Parker's coming in and cutting that ring off and trying to get Fabio Wardley against the corners and the ropes, I think that Fabio Wardley, what he could do is use a lot of lateral movement. A lot of combination punching, and not staying in the pocket with Joseph Parker for too long. This is kind of how I would anticipate the fight would go, the styles would go. I mean, Fabio loves a tear-up, and I think at some point during the fight that's going to happen between the two of them, whether it's early on or whether it goes past those 6 rounds and it ends up being a 12-round fight and a war. But Joseph Parker's going to use his abilities. He's going to be able to cut the ring off. He's going to be able to use the jab. He's going to try and get on the inside and exploit the vulnerabilities of Fabio Wardley, which is that he can be hit quite easy if he leaves himself open enough. But if the Fabio Wardley can't go for the lateral movement side and they use combination punching, they try and evade what Joseph Parker's trying to do, then maybe there's a chance that Fabio Wardley could cause some damage from the outside and systematically wear down Joseph Parker. I do feel like it's going to be that old cliche cat and mouse style fight where you're going to have Joseph Parker being the front foot aggressor, moving forward, trying to break down Fabio Wardley, trying to cut that ring off, trying to trap him in the corners against the ropes. And I think Fabio Wardley's going to come out there. I don't think he's straight away he's going to come gunning for Joseph Parker. I think at some point, if he gets hurt, then I think he will revert to that slugfest style that he brings to the table, that old unlicensed style that he brings to the table, where he's, unorthodox and he throws wild shots, and all it takes is one of those wild shots to come flying through, and we've got a different fight going on, haven't we? So it is going to be very interesting, sort of how it plays out. Those are the ways in which I think both guys could win this fight. In terms of what I actually think's going to happen, the reality is for me that Joseph Parker's got too much experience behind him, and with what he's achieved recently, I think he can systematically break down Fabio Wardley. Whether it's the way I think he could do it or whether it's a different way, I do think he's going to systematically break him down. And I do think inexperience will play a factor in this fight. And if Fabio Wardley isn't able to evade some of those straight shots and able to get out of the pocket, then I think Joseph Parker can win this fight. And ultimately, that's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to be an interesting fight. We're going to see real good moments of the fight where there's going to be tear-ups, but I do think Joseph Parker's the more polished, more experienced fighter who's going to use that to his advantage at some point in the fight, and Fabio Wardley's inexperience is what's going to probably lose him the fight here. It's just a shame it isn't a little bit later in Fabio's career, to be honest, because I think Fabio, again, with a few more fights under his belt, a few more high-level experience fights under his belt, could make this more of a 50-50. People might not agree with that assessment. They might not agree with the way I've broken it down, and that's fine. You're more than welcome to comment on Spotify, or you're more than welcome to make a comment on social media about what you think is going to happen in this fight. It's just my opinion at the end of the day. I'm no boxing expert. It's just what I've experienced watching fighters like these previously doing a fight. We could watch this fight on Saturday and see Fabio Wardley knock Joseph Parker out and completely upset his plans, and Fabio Wardley essentially changes the landscape of the heavyweight division just a little bit, because then he's got an argument to say, well, do you know what? I should be fighting Alexander Usyk next. I've just beat Joseph Parker. He beat Deontay Wilder, Martin Bakole, Zhilei Zhang. Why shouldn't I be fighting him next? So, there is possibilities that this can happen, but I'm solidified in my opinion and my pick that Joseph Parker wins this fight. I like both of them. I do. And I wouldn't be remiss for both of them getting a victory here. They're both nice people. and they're both sportsman-like fighters, and I like that in both of them. I like the underdog element in Fabio Wardley, so if he kind of got that victory, I wouldn't be too upset, of course. Like, I like the underdog stories, so I'd kind of be maybe secretly rooting a little bit for Fabio to cause an upset, but then the logical side of me says, Joseph Parker deserves his opportunity. He's taking a risk, a potential banana skin. But I think if he beats Fabio in emphatic fashion, all he does is solidify his claim that he's the next heir to the throne. Simple as that for me. And that's how I think this fight's going to play out. Really interesting fight. I'm really looking forward to it. I've needed another big fight like this. It is for me. It is a big fight. I mean, we had the obviously Alan Makhmudov fight last week, which I wouldn't consider a big fight, but it was something that I thought would entertain me, and it did. This is like next level. This is a guy that should be fighting for a world title, if not be a world champion, in Joseph Parker, against a guy who's come from the unlicensed circuit, who's built his own story behind him. He's built his own momentum behind him. You can see there's vulnerabilities in him, but he's still really exciting to watch. And it provides the recipe for a great fight. And that's what I'm looking forward to with this particular fight this weekend. The rest of the card is made up of fights, which I'll just list off. There isn't any specifically that really I feel, this is going to be an entertaining fight, or it's jumping out at me as something that I'm genuinely excited about. So the fights on the card: Lewis Edmondson versus Ezra Taylor, British light heavyweight title up for grabs. Really well matched fight that I will tune into because I think it's definitely worth watching. Then you've got the IBO Cruiserweight Championship, a vacant belt with Jürgen Udelai versus Rolly Lambert Fagum. Not so familiar with either of those fighters, I'll be totally honest with you. That's not something that's kind of striking me as one that I want to make sure I tune into. Danny Quartermain versus Royston Barney-Smith, two undefeated fighters. Royston Barney-Smith has been, I like to call it, marinated by Frank Warren and the Frank Warren stable. I think he's being touted as a potential world champion in the super featherweight division if nobody's seen him yet. And he's been looking good so far, but he's got a very interesting fight on his hands against Danny Quartermain here. Fellow undefeated fighter, of course, as well. You've got Mitchell Smith versus Arnie Dawson, WBO European lightweight title up for grabs. Again, vacant title there. And then the rest of the card is filled with prospect versus journeyman, which is pretty standard for a card of this nature. So that pretty much wraps up this particular card. There isn't any other fights happening of note this weekend. It was supposed to be Sebastian Fundora versus Keith Thurman and Oshaki Foster versus Stephen Fulton, two WBC titles up for grabs in different divisions. However, that card got cancelled recently, and so the main fight was cancelled because there was an injury, and that was from Sebastian Fundora's side. He was a hand contusion in sparring. So that got cancelled, and then I thought, maybe the Oshaki Foster fight would be moved up to prime position, but they actually cancelled the whole thing. So that card's off the table, and that was the other one I was kind of looking forward to this weekend. So for me, there isn't any other massively notable fights happening from my perspective this weekend. Of course, if you want a more breakdown of what else is happening in America, I'll always tell you to go over to my friend Lukey's podcast because he knows his stuff. He does a lot of stuff over there. He's not been on the show for ages. I've not been able to speak to him for ages because I've just been genuinely busy myself. It'd be great to hook back up with Lukey soon and get something going as well. And also, I've been speaking to my friend Hamed as well, who's been on the show a few times. I'm going to try and get him on as well. I was supposed to record another episode this last week on the British boxing scene. I've not had the chance to do it. I am going to do it this week for you guys. So there will be another episode with my thoughts and feelings on that. I think it's still a relevant topic to talk about. I still think I'd like to hear from other people on this relevant topic and see how they feel about this. It's funny because even though I've not recorded the episode, I have seen a few boxing pages on Facebook particularly that I've actually been posting about sort of throwback cards, throwback UK Friday night and Saturday night cards, and that's kind of in line with what the conversation is I wanted to have on the podcast. And you've seen some cards in the past and they were just great. They were just some really well matched cards, and British boxing was absolutely thriving. But I just feel, again, I'll say it again, I know I've said it last week, but I do feel it's suffering at the moment. I do feel we're suffering as a result of Riyadh season predominantly, and the ability for them matching up these cards and these big fights. As much as I've loved having the big fight cards and been excited for these cards, you don't really realise the impact it's having on UK boxing. And UK boxing was what got me started in boxing. Watching all the Friday night fights, the Saturday night fights, they were great. You know, some great wars, some great cards in the 90s and the 2000s. I just feel like now we're really past all that, and we're suffering. I think as a nation, as a sport that sort of thrives itself on talent coming through, being unearthed, hidden gems, diamonds in the rough, whatever you want to call it. I think it's even more difficult now to get that, and it must be even more difficult for the local promoters across the different areas of the country to be able to push that talent out there. It's kind of like, the analogy I always use is like lower league football, lower league soccer for you guys in America. You get like your lower divisions where you get talented players that get snapped up by Premier League teams because they're too good to be playing in them lower leagues. You get fighters like that are too good to be fighting on small hall shows and need really to be pushed into the limelight sooner and put on TV sooner. But I feel like that's not happening as much now because of the fact that we're not getting as many UK-based shows that are of high quality anymore. And I think that's all in part to Riyadh season. And that's a conversation I will have separately. So I think that pretty much brings an end to this preview. Again, I'll probably just recap on what we've discussed in this one. Just my final thoughts and feelings on the big fight this weekend. Joseph Parker's experience, I think, will overcome Fabio Wardley's inexperience. But Fabio Wardley will not go down without a fight. When he gets hurt, he really comes forward. He throws everything at the opponent, and that's what makes this fight exciting. But again, I've got to go with Joseph Parker. I think he's too class. He's too cute in the ring. I think he's going to have that level of experience that he had from previous fights that he'll take in there, and he'll do a number on Fabio. He might either systematically beat him down or he'll emphatically knock him out. But I certainly think it's going to be fun while it lasts. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings an end to this preview. If you haven't listened to any of the other shows that we have on the network, we have the Legendary Nights podcast, 4 seasons of that. We have the Dark Side of Boxing, 3 seasons of the Dark Side of Boxing. And of course, we have one of our mainstays, the Career Profiles podcast, currently running the Mike Tyson Career Profile. 4 parts are available there to listen to that, plus many, many, many other career profiles that you may or may not have listened to. The likes of Muhammad Ali, the likes of Jack Johnson, Harry Greb, Joe Gans, promoters like Tex Rickard, trainers like Angelo Dundee and Cus D'Amato. There's so many different episodes on there that we've done over the years. I'd really, really appreciate it if you could go and take a look and take a listen to some of that content, because there's some great stuff on there that we've covered over the years. For those that have probably already listened to it, I apologise. There isn't anything more I can bring to the table at the moment other than the mainstay show on the BTR network. But part 5 of the Tyson Career Profile is coming very, very soon, so that'll be coming up next in the next few weeks. But that is it for this episode. As always, thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for listening to the episodes. Thank you for interacting on social media, on Spotify and YouTube. I really do appreciate it. If you've got any thoughts and feelings on the Parker versus Wardley fight, drop a comment on Spotify when the episode has gone live. Make sure you drop a comment on social media. There will be some posts going out about it this week, so please do interact on there. If you've got any questions, please always get in touch via the social media channels at BTR Boxing Podcast. We're on all social media channels there. Thank you so much, as always, for listening, and I'll see you next time.
The dream is made real. Ricky Hatton rocks